Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, we're back with an actual Magic set. It feels good. How are you doing today?
Oh, we are so back. New year, new set. It's real Magic cards from a really cool plane. I'm hyped for it, man.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. There's a lot of cool cards for us to get through today. So we're back in Lorwyn, 19 years after we were first there. Seems longer than I thought it was, but it's nice to be back in a recognizable environment. We have a ton of cool cards to get through today and in our next episode. The goal for today is we're going to be going through white, blue, and black cards, and then next week we're going to be going through red, green, multicolored, and some lands. There will be time codes below if you want to jump around. Also, if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, there will be a card gallery down in the show notes below if you want to see the cards that we're talking about from the set, and also any cards that we mention and reference. We'll try and read them out where relevant, but if there's some we shorthand, there'll be images in the show notes below if you want to have a nice look at them as well. James, I know that Lorwyn was before you started playing Magic, but you've played Commander, you've played Cube. There's a ton of cool cards from the original set. Kind of like, what's your memories of Lorwyn or your impressions of the original set?
Yeah, the original Lorwyn block always looks super cool to me. I think I've done one Lorwyn draft lifetime. So my experience with the draft format is not super big, but the cards, I think there's a lot of really cool cards. And the other thing I really like about original Lorwyn block is it has a very distinctive art style, which I think is really cool. And there's not many planes where like you can look at a card and be like, oh, that's a Lorwyn card, even if it's not a picture of a very distinct like character or whatever. It sort of has quite a distinctive art style, and I think that's really cool. And that comes across in a bunch of the new cards as well. So yeah, I'm hyped to go back to Lorwyn. I think the set looks really cool.
No, exactly, yeah. The original set had a ton of cool cards and cool mechanics that kind of still see a lot of cube play, and there's a lot of homages to some of those cards in this set that we're going to be chatting about in our episodes. One thing we should mention before we jump in is that in terms of sets, Lorwyn Eclipsed is sort of a parasitic set. There's a ton of cool cube cards. We actually have more than normal to talk about over the next two episodes. There's a ton of cool cards that we like. But when I say parasitic, I mean that similar to Avatar, there's a bunch of cards that work well within the set but won't transition well to generic cubes. Like specifically, I'm talking about things like creature type matters and -1/-1 counters. When you're running creature type matters cards, it's normally that the cube itself is doing a bunch of creature type matter stuff. Like you might have goblins in red, you might have elves in green, you might have merfolk in blue, that kind of thing. There's a bunch of cool cards for those specific decks which only really go in those homes. Like there's a bunch of goblin cards and elf cards that only really work if you have those specific decks. So we might not touch on all of those. We'll try and keep it on ones that kind of can go in any cube that is running a specific creature type matters, like archetype across the whole thing, basically. Because in larger cubes, in more generically powerful cubes, we tend to not see specific creature type matters appear that much. Kind of, would you go along with that, James?
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing is with the typal payoff stuff, right, is that it's it can't really be a light touch. You know, if you're doing it in your cube, you kind of have to commit to it because you need that critical mass of the appropriate type for it to really start functioning. That being said, if you are supporting that in your cube, it can be cool, and there's a lot of stuff for you in this set for sure. Specifically, I like that there are changelings. So changelings, obviously, cards that have all creature types. I think those are really, really important if you're doing creature type matters cubes because you need pivot cards in the draft, right? You need enough cards that go in multiple different archetypes. The drafts can get really, really boring if you just end up with a scenario where you have to pick your lane really, really early and just commit to it because all your cards only work in one deck, right? Anyone who drafted like Ixalan is familiar with this experience, right? And changelings give you that ability to pivot between decks, which is really important. And there's quite a small pool of pre-existing changelings. If you're doing it in your cube, you'll probably have sort of been scraping that barrel a little bit, you know? So getting a few more in this set, I think, will be really welcome for those cubes.
No, exactly. I think the other limited environment I wanted to just mention, along with Ixalan, is Bloomburrow. That was a real, like, on the rails, like, draft environment. And, like, for me, yeah, the changelings really help smooth over all the cracks and help you get enough bits without having to get specific, an elf at 3, that kind of stuff. Like, I think changelings work really well for this limited environment, and there's a bunch of changelings in this set that we're probably I'm not going to touch on in too much detail because you'll know if you want them. The funnily, the main creature type matters archetype I've seen work in kind of generic cubes is humans, but there's famously no humans on Lorwyn, so we don't get too much of that archetype here. The other mechanic in this set that is a little bit parasitic, as it were, is -1/-1 counters. Outside of Amonkhet and original Lorwyn block, there haven't been too many archetypes and decks that have kind of come out from -1/-1 counters. So we have a bunch of cool blight cards to talk about, but they're going to be more self-contained than the -1/-1 strategy, as it were.
Yeah, for sure. There's, I guess there's a little bit of crossover with if you're doing sort of persist stuff in your cube that obviously interacts with -1/-1 counters. There's maybe something there for you. Go listen to our episode from a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, in general, that's a mechanic that is pretty confined to this set, and there are definitely cards which are asking you to commit to that as a theme, and that's probably not happening in most cubes.
No, exactly. And yeah, one reason we wanted to flag the creature type matters cards and the -1/-1 counters matters cards specifically is because when we do these set reviews, we try and talk about cards that go in as wide a range of cubes as possible. And it's always important to remember that we are comparing every card in this set to every card that has ever come before it. So if we don't mention a card, that doesn't mean that it's bad and you're bad for running it. It means that we don't think it's going to find place in a wide variety of cubes. Also, when we talk about cards, we'll generally talk about them in terms of what cube they might go into. And when we do that, that's normally with things like power level, restrictions, and size. So for power level, we're basically trying to describe the pool of cards that the rest of the cube is picked from. So like an entry-level cube, or like a beginner cube, or like someone's first cube, we might describe as low-powered or budget. There's a lot of cool cards that you might run, but generally these cubes are looking for fun games rather than doing broken things really quickly. Think of these as somewhere between a regular set draft and like a master's set. You then tend to have your mid-powered cubes. In these, the games are getting a little faster, there's better fixing, and you'll start seeing more staples from lots of formats, so cards like Lightning Bolt and Counterspells and maybe Fetch Lands. Previously, these might have been known as Standard, Modern, or Legacy cubes. These cubes are still a little slower, you have time to do more of an engine and build more of a mid-rangey game plan. And then you have the real high-powered cubes. They're generally environments that are optimized to run the best cards possible. In these, the games are powerful and the decks need to be more focused, and you have to be doing a thing. The best example of high-powered cubes are the Mitgo Vintage Cube or the Arena Powered Cube. Me and James also have cubes, like James has a full-powered Vintage Cube. I have 2 cubes I keep up to date. I have a unpowered Vintage Cube, slightly less powerful than that, and I have a slower Treat Yourself Cube, which is more mid-rangey, do fun things. So if you mention cards for those cubes, that's kind of what we're talking about. In terms of restrictions, the most common you find are Pauper, which is a cube using only commons, and Peasant, which is a cube using only uncommons. So if we say this card is good in Pauper, it means it's good in an environment where all the cards in the cube are commons. And then if we mention size, the general idea here is that the smaller the cube is, the average, the card quality is higher. Like in a 360 cube, for example, for a card to get in there, it has to be super focused and super efficient. Whereas in larger cubes, like a 540 or a 720, there is room for less optimal bits, and you're often looking for duplicates of effects. So if we say a card could see play in a 720 cube, it probably means there's a card that exists that does that effect maybe better. But if we want a second version of that effect, that's where we could consider running this card. All right, so with all that preamble out the way, let's talk about some awesome Magic cards. James, do you want to take it away with our first white card of the day?
Yeah, for sure. So first up, we have Adept Water Shaper. This is 2 and a white for a 3/4 creature Merfolk Cleric. There, it says, other tapped creatures you control have indestructible. So first thing to say about this, really good stats, right? 3 mana, 3/4, very, very solid, especially in white, right? That's the sort of stat line we're more used to seeing out of a green 3-drop, so really good body. The ability is solid. It's if you're on the front foot and they can't remove this is going to be really annoying for them. It means they're not going to be able to kill your creatures in combat. If they do find a removal spell, obviously the first removal spell is going at this the majority of the time, but they can also kill your other creatures with removal when they're untapped. So not a huge deal there, but can be annoying in combat if you're on the front foot. Having said that, doesn't do that much when you're behind as an ability, but I guess at least the body is well statted for blocks. We're finding that it is possible to get to use that ability a little more on blocks if you have some vehicles. Vehicles let you obviously tap your creatures outside of combat, right? You can line up some blocks. The way crew works, you can crew a vehicle that is already crewed if you want to. You can also overcrew a vehicle. It does just let you tap your creatures whenever you want to. So you could line up a bunch of blocks, then tap all your creatures so they become indestructible. That's something. I guess the reason I think this probably won't see play in tons of cubes is just it's a bit hard to see where it fits, because obviously it needs to go in a creature-heavy deck. If you're just looking for a free drop for a generic white beatdown deck, this is very decent, but there are better ones, right? It's not. I don't think this is sort of absolutely tier one, because there's a lot of good ones that do something on the way in that leave you a bit of value, and the ones that don't are things like Adeline, right, which is just a more snowbally card than this is. And that's fine, right? Not every cube is just looking to play for the most powerful cards, but the ones that aren't are generally looking for cards that have a specific synergy in a specific archetype, right? Which this kind of doesn't. It's kind of just a generic, like, good with creatures sort of card. So I think the lack of a sort of natural synergistic home might limit how often this sees play. But if it's a card that appeals to you, like, put it in your cube and it will be very solid, I think. Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah, I think it's a very fine Magic card. The vehicles part is very nice. I didn't clock that. The other ones I had were, in theory, you could like tap a mana dork after blocks, or like a Merfolk Loot or something like that. Like, there is a bit of play there on defense, and like I think the fact that it can be offensive and defensive to an extent, I think is quite nice. Like, the way I was looking at this is that effectively this is like a Golem Gate style of card, like a card that gives our attacking creatures indestructible, so we can swing through forever for free. But this is actually playable in cube, because Dolem's Gate is a great commander card, but it doesn't attack or block. It does nothing by itself. Like, there's I think a god from Theros that's like a 2-color god that kind of eventually will get turned on, but not really in limited. That is also more of a commander card. So I saw this as more, if you want a Dolem Gate style of effect, this is one you can actually run in cube. Again, I agree with you. I think it's interesting. I think it's, not one for the most efficient cubes, because you're correct. It doesn't have an ETB, and it doesn't snowball and win you the game, which a lot of the white 3-drops that are good do. But for lower powered cubes, I think this is a fine card.
Yeah, for sure. I guess you could theoretically like find a way to tap all your creatures and then Wrath, and that's something.
That is quite hot, yeah.
But the issue is going to be like the Wrath and this card want to go in generally very different decks, right? This wants to go in your like 17 creature deck, and that deck does not want Wrath of God. So yeah, it might be a little bit tough to get that working.
I guess it is a Merfolk. Kind of like as you mentioned, we're not going too deep on the Merfolk specific cards in this set, but Merfolk, like in this set anyway, Merfolk is white blue. I know in Ixalan it was green blue, but if you're pushing Merfolk, then it is a decent Merfolk at 3. So that is possibly more of a place for it.
Yeah, very true.
All right, we have our Planeswalker for the set. I love that we only get one now. Ajani Outland Chaperone. It is 1 white for a 3 starting loyalty legendary Planeswalker Ajani. It has a +1 of create a 1/1 green and white Kithkin creature token. Has a -2 of Ajani deals 4 damage to target tapped creature. And a -8 of look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your life total. You may put any number of non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So I quite like this Ajani, and partly because I don't think it's super strong. Like, this feels like a Planeswalker from a decade ago, like before they all had static abilities or made a token and then flipped and then won the game really easily. Like, it comes in, it protects itself on the uptick, The removal is the down tick, remove something pesky. The ultimate wins you the game. Like, I quite like that. There aren't also that many 3-mana white planeswalkers. Like, this is the best. There's a few Gideons that are fine, but I think this is probably generically the best white 3-drop planeswalker now. Yeah, this one isn't game breaking. I don't think it belongs in the vintage powered cube, but in budget cubes and in slower cubes, this will feel strong because it is a 3-mana planeswalker. But I like the fact that this feels fair. This feels nice and cool and fair, and will be a solid. And yeah, it will be solid because it is a 3-mana planeswalker. That will be fine enough, I think. Yeah, not the most backbreaking card, and not the most backbreaking Ajani, but still a cool card. I would be fine running this in like a lower powered cube.
Yeah, I mean, Ajani Nacatl Fire is the best card in Magic, as
yes,
we know. So
it is.
It's hard for it to be the best Ajani. Yeah, no, I think this is cool. I think for a 3-mana Planeswalker, plus to make a 1/1, minus to conditionally kill something is about where those cards should end up, right? I quite like this in one specific home. I think there's a lot of cubes you see have some sort of white-based tokens theme, right? And one of the issues I think those decks can fall into is that because a lot of the token makers are quite aggressive, often people try and put in a white-based tokens synergy deck, but it actually ends up just being a white beatdown deck, right? And people don't really end up leaning into the tokens synergy stuff that much. Whereas this is a repeatable way to make a token, which isn't super aggressive, but is like pretty competitively costed and can help keep you alive. And that I think is good if you want people to do a bit more of the slower, go wide, generate a bunch of tokens, generate a bunch of value stuff. So I think this does have quite a nice home in that way. Without being like a super busted card, I think it is fine. I don't think you're getting to the -8 very often. But I guess it could come up. But yeah, I think the +1, the -2 are both pretty solid.
If this is ultimating, it's more because like something else is happening as well. Like you're proliferating or you're getting counters on it in some other way, is my gut. Like 5 turns. I mean, turn 8, maybe. Like again, in a slower cube, if this comes down on 3, there is a world. But I feel you're going to be wanting to want to be answering their creatures at some point, and that -2 is actually quite good. So
yeah, for sure. I guess maybe there's just a massive board stall, right, and nothing attacks, so there are no tapped creatures, and it just pluses forever, right? But it doesn't feel like a huge part of the card.
Nice. All right. We have a flip card now, James. What do you think of Brigid Klacken's Heart?
Yeah, so this has a lot of words on it. So Brigid, I think, is pretty good, though. So it's a 2 and a white for a 3/2. Legendary creature Kifkin Warrior, everyone's favorite tribe, making a comeback. And it says, when this creature enters or transforms into Brigid Klacken's Heart, create a 1/1 green and white Kifkin creature token. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay green if you do transform Brigid. So that's going to be the turn after you've played it, will be the first time you can transform it. So it comes in, so 3/2 makes a 1/1. Next turn, you get the option to transform it. The other side is Brigid Dune's Mind. This is a 3/2 legendary creature, Kifkin Soldier, but it has tap to add X green or X white mana, where X is the number of other creatures you control. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay white and turn it back to the front side, which will, again, make another token. I think, again, this is pretty solid in a token stack. The money is really on the backside, right? That sort of pseudo Gaia's Cradle ability is obviously very powerful, but the front side does set it up really nicely. And if late in the game you're sort of short of bodies or you're short of things to do with that extra mana, you can pay the white and flip it back. I think really the sort of default pattern here is going to be play it, make a 1/1, next turn, flip it over, get a bunch of mana. And to be clear, this is the sort of transform where it doesn't leave the battlefield, so we can tap it for mana as soon as we transform. And I think, most games are just going to leave it on that pseudo Gaia's Cradle mode for most of the game. I think this is really cool. It's good with all the stuff that Cradle is good with. You can untap it if you have great mana sinks, then it's going to do a lot for you. Obviously, it's slower than Cradle. It's easier to remove than Cradle. It's a lower power level card for that reason. But it gives you access to the same sort of powerful synergies. And I think that's cool. And it's cool to get access to those synergies in cubes where Gaia's Cradle is not of the appropriate power level, or just you
budget.
Don't want a proxy you don't want to spend however much money a Gaia's Cradle costs. I think this is a really cool option to have. Like, I think Growing Rights of Itlamok has seen play for sort of similar reasons, right? And this card will get you access to that Gaia's Cradle effect a bit earlier than Growing Rights in general. It is it's obviously easier to kill, but if you want that sort of pseudo Gaia's Cradle thing in your cube, I think this is a pretty good option.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on there with it. I think the other thing that's important to mention is that for me, this is a Selesnya card. Like, this isn't a card that we're happy running in our mono white deck, because effectively then it's just a 4/3 over 2 bodies, which we're not super happy about. Like, James, actually, do you think we have to be full Selesnya, or can we be like a 2-color deck and splash green to flip it? Like, because I'm not super happy about this. Like, maybe the cubes this is going into, the cubes where Gaia's Cradle is either budgetary restriction or power level restriction, this and not flipping immediately isn't the end of the world, because maybe they're a bit slower. But kind of like, how are you seeing this card? Like, can we splash for this, or do you think we need to be full-blown Selesnya so that we can flip it the turn after we play it?
I would want really reliable access to green mana for this card. Listen, otherwise, 3 mana plus a 3/2 plus a 1/1 is like, you wouldn't be surprised if that was a booster draft common, right? That's not at the power level for most cubes. I think you need access to that green mana pretty reliably. And you also need like good things to be doing with that mana, right? This can't just be like, oh, I might get to play my 5-drop a turn ahead of time. Like, if that's what you want the extra mana for, you should just play a cheaper mana dog. You want like mana sinks for this card, right? Stuff like Retrofitter Foundry, right? Or Walking Bliss, something you can repeatedly put the mana into. Retrofitter Foundry is a particular standout because it both provides a mana sink and fuels this because it generates more tokens and it really snowballs. Certainly, I think you want to be viewing this as a full-on Selesnya gold card.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd go along with that. Right, we have another flip card next, also with a lot of text. We have Urdu, Carrier of Dawn. It is 3 white for a 5/5 legendary creature, Elemental God. It has flying, lifelink, and creature spells you cast have Convoke, which, as a reminder, is your creatures can help cast those spells. Each creature you tap while casting a creature spell pays 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's colour. It also, similarly to Brigid, has, at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a black if you do transform Urdu. It transforms into Isilu, Carrier of Twilight, which is a 5/5 legendary creature, Elemental God, with flying, lifelink, and each other non-token creature you control has Persist, which is a mechanic we talked about a bit in this episode, but I will read it now. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a white to transform Isilu back into Urdu. So, base stats, let's talk about this. In a regular creature deck, a 5 mana is very close to my top end. A 5 mana flyer with lifelink is fine, but nowadays we want something a little bit extra. Because at 5 mana, giving the next spell we cast Convoke, I'm not super excited by. Like, there's no ETB here. Effectively, we're just playing this as a beta at the top end. So, similarly to Brigid, I'm viewing this as a Orzhov card. Like, it's a card in a lower power level cube. I think, unlike Brigid, you would probably still run this in a white deck, but you're only happy about it in a 2-color deck, because the backside of this, I'm actually quite high on. Giving every creature we have that's non-token persist, or giving every other non-token creature we have persist, I think is really good. That is work that I want to do. I've run Cauldron of Souls in Commander before. That's the artifact that gives everything persist. That is very cool. This is kind of like, this is a version of that we can run in Cube because it's also on a 5/5 flyer. So it can win us the game if we don't have a board state, if we're just top decking. But if we have a board state, there's a bunch of cool stuff we can do with this. Like, if you're doing, like, this will work as a creature combo card if you're doing the persist combos. But also on top of that, just doubling up all of your aristocrat death triggers is nice. Like, that is pretty good. Like you can't, like this with a Blood Artist and a Sack Outlet and any kind of board, you will probably just win the game because you're going to double up all your triggers off of all your non-token creatures dying. I think this is a solid card. I don't know the ceiling of it. Like, this seems like one to me that they will put in the Mitgo Vintage Cube and it will rotate out. But I think if you're doing aristocrat stuff, I think if you're doing sack stuff, I think this could be quite solid and like a nice little piece. And it's like a way of getting, like, it's also a persist combo card that is actually a good creature on itself and on rate, which a lot of the persist combo creatures aren't because they're quite old now. James, what do you think of these two elemental gods?
I think my issue with the persist stuff is that it's expensive enough and then takes a turn to get to. So I feel like I'm not going to have it reliably enough for it to be worth me building around, you know? Like, if I am putting sort of otherwise suboptimal cards in my deck to try and get this synergy to work, then I kind of need to get access to a synergy right away, right? And I feel like the games where I'm untapping with my giant lifelinking flyer, I'm probably in decent shape anyway. Yeah, I would be higher on it if the persist part was on the front side.
Yes, yes, I do agree with that. Or we could do it, or we could activate it at the same turn. The fact we do have to untap with it does suck.
Yeah, for me, as it is, I think this card is closer to Baneslayer Angel than anything else.
I mean, that's not the end of the world.
No, it's not at all.
I think why I'm hot on it is like that is the floor on it, but you have the potential to do some Timmy nonsense with it as well.
Yeah, I'm a bit low value on the other text because, yeah, I think the Convoke part would be really good on a 1-drop. It's pretty low impact when you get to 5, right? Like,
yes,
there will be some turns where you get to pay this and then play another Convoke out another creature right away, but it's not a huge part. So I don't care about that. The persist stuff, like, sure, if you're building around it, I'm not sure if you're going to have access to it enough for it to be worth building around. And then on the fair, it's like, it's good against drafts, but that's kind of about it. But because if they have a removal spell, they're going to be removing this, right? Not your other creatures, regardless. So I suspect this is closer in value. I think it's pretty close which one I prefer between this and Baneslayer Angel. Like, I'm not actually sure all this text adds up to be better than Baneslayer Angel having first strike, you know? Because it's good against you can't really double block it, right? And sometimes you get to double block this. Basically, I think they line up pretty much the same in that, like, when this card lives, it's really hard to lose the game. Because you're gaining so much life, it just dominates the air. But that's the issue with Baneslayer Angel and similar cards, right? Is that when they are able to deal with it, they'll be doing so at a really big mana advantage, and they don't leave any value behind. So yeah, for me, it's like, if you have a slot for that big lifelinky flyer, you have a Baneslayer Angel or Lyra Dawnbringer or something like that, and you think this card looks cool, then maybe that would be a cool switch. But I wouldn't be like going out of my way to include this card. My other main issue of this card is that I think this is very clearly a dragon to me.
Yeah,
you know?
it would be better if it was a dragon. Actively better if it was a dragon. Apart from...
And it's breathing fire,
yes.
No? It's breathing fire, and it's a giant flying...
It's breathing sunlight.
Oh, okay.
I think. I'm guessing that's what it's doing.
Okay, yeah, the art might be a bit small on my screen. It looks very dragon-like to me. Make it a dragon.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with all of that. I think the only other thing is worth mentioning is that, James mentioned Lyra Dawnbringer and Baneslayer Angel. The thing is, apart from that, you only really have Solitude and Guardian Scale Lord that see a great amount of play at 5s in white. 5s isn't the most deep in terms of cards, so I could see this being tested, like especially in a larger cube. Maybe that's where this gets in if you have the Aristocratic stuff or some other synergies, and it might come off. But I could see this card being tested in a bunch of cubes. But yeah, I agree. If you just in cubes that just want more efficient death, this is not that, I guess. All right, we have another Kithkin next, James. What do you think of Kinskir Sentry?
Yeah, so Kinskir Sentry is 1 white for a 2/2 creature Kithkin soldier. It has first strike and lifelink. That's a good start. 2 mana, 2/2 first strike, lifelink is very solid. Says, when this creature attacks, you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, where X is the number of attacking creatures you control. So I think most of what's going on here is it's 2 mana and has good keywords.
It's not a bad flaw, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Like you think about, people still put like Gifted Etherborn in cubes, right? That's a really hard to cast 2 black for a 2/3 first strike lifelink, I think. Or is it lifelink Death Touch? Anyway, this is like perfectly solid flaw, right? It's easy to cast. We don't mind it at all. It'll be good against all the aggro decks. It'll be good against when we're brawling in combat with creatures, The ability, there will be a lot of games where you never put a creature into play with this because you need to have multiple creatures with good attacks and have something appropriately costed in hand. And to actually get an edge, you kind of need something else to be spending your mana on, right? If you're putting in a creature, but you could also have just cast that creature at turn, you're mostly not getting a big advantage, right? But there will certainly be games where it turns your like okay curve out into a great curve out, right? Like, say I go 1-drop into this, and then on turn 3, I can put in a 2-drop with this, plus play my 3-drop. That's now getting out of control really, really quickly. And your opponent's going to be very dead unless they have a sweeper. So that is really nice, but I think that will not be the majority of games. I think that adds... And plus it does things like maybe later in the game, you're worried about permission, you can maybe get in your creature with this ability and bypass the stack, right? And that's something too. But I think in general, we're looking at a very solid white 2-drop, but not like tier 1, If you look at the 2-drops that you'd sort of play in the most powerful cubes, they all, I think, have a little bit more utility than this. So yeah, I'd say this is like a very solid 2, but probably not tier 1,
Yeah, I guess that's just because tier 1's got so ridiculously powerful, I think. No, I quite like this card. I guess Wizards didn't get the memo that Boris aggro was a bit too good. I don't have too much to add to that. I think very solid card. I think this will see a play in a bunch of cubes. Like, I think this is one that we will see in the Miko Vintage Cube for a little bit. If it's cheap, I'll probably try it in mine. Like, I have other just like generic aggressive creatures. Because the floor's fine, and there is the potential to just do some really snowbally things. Very cool card. Seems like a solid one to me. All right, let's move on to blue. Next up, we have Glamourmite. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 creature fairy rogue with flash, flying, and when this creature enters, choose one. You can either tap target creature or you can untap target creature. So this is an entry into the Pestamite Deceiver Exarch style of card. Flash creature comes in and taps or untaps something. Famously, we'll go infinite with Kiki Chiki and Splinter Twin. We love that. And while that deck doesn't see as much play in Vintage cubes specifically anymore, that's still a favourite archetype in mid-range and lower powered level cubes. And in larger cubes, this is obviously like a third version of that effect, which is quite nice. In cubes already running that combo, my gut is this actually replaces Deceiver Exarch if you're like a 360 or a 540, because that means that every part of the creature side, so Pestamite, Kiki Jiki, and this can be found by both Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter of the Guard. They are creature-based shooters that care about like power and toughness. The one that cares about toughness can't get Deceiver Exarch because its booty's too big. But this can be found by all those pieces, so every part can be found by tutors, which is nice. So that's, I think, the main place this will see play. The only other thing worth mentioning is that this is a common, and Fairies is a deck in Pauper. Spells such as Sprite counters spells equal to the number of fairies that you control. And there's a bunch of other fairy stuff from this set and from previous sets as well, which is quite nice. So if you're running that, then this gets better because it's just another fairy that you might want to run. It's like base level, it's a tempo play. But if you have some other synergies, then cool, you can get that out of it as well. Yeah, cool card. My gut is that's kind of the points it will see play, Pauper or like combo. James, would you kind of go along with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the only place I'd be looking at this is if I'm doing the Kiki-Jiki Splinter Twin thing. It's interesting. In my head, it was Pestamite that was on the chopping block, just because if you wanted to cut one, you could obviously run all three. But just because Exarch is the 4 toughness is harder to remove, right? I think this versus Pestamite is actually kind of interesting because this obviously has the second point of toughness, which is certainly very real. Like not dying to Bowman specifically is not nothing. But this has the downside compared to Pestamite, that this only taps or untaps creatures. So with Pestamite, one thing you could do, and the same with Exarch, is you go flash in your end step, you tap down your opponent's land. Now, if they have the removal spell up, they have to kill it right then, right? They can't then wait until you put the Splinter Twin on it and blow you out because you've tapped them out of the mana. Plus, you can occasionally even try and do it all in one turn where you play your Pestamite, untap your land, play your Splinter Twin. This obviously just taps or untaps creatures, so it doesn't quite have that upside. So yeah, I think it's another option to consider in that line, but not like a huge upgrade, and not like a reason. And it's not a big power level boost to the deck, certainly.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I didn't clock the non-creature part. Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. Yeah. I guess probably actually, realistically, it's a third copy. I guess is where we are with it. That kind of archetype needs the help it can get. Right, James, we have a familiar-ish card coming next. What do you think about Glen Elendra Guardian?
Yeah, so Glen Elendra Guardian is 2 and a blue for a 4 creature fairy wizard with flash and flying. Enters the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it, and you can pay 1 a blue to remove a counter from this creature and counter target non-creature spell, but its controller draws a card. This, I think, is a very solid addition to the sort of pantheon of disruptive blue flash creatures, right? We've
annoying
got the
dorks, yes.
yeah, and we've got a lot of them recently, right? Like Shoshana's Tidebinder has been really, really good. Stuff like Brazen Borrower, Vendilion Click. I think having that sort of armory of flash threats gives the blue decks that want to play at instant speed a really big advantage, right? Because it means they can be holding up counter magic or threatening to pay a threat, and you can't play around all of them a lot of the time, right? So I think a bit of redundancy there is really nice. This obviously, the comparison here is with the old Glen Elendra Archmage. That was a much slower card. It costs 4 mana. It didn't have flash, but it did threaten to counter 2 spells potentially. This on the base of it can only counter 1 and give some of the card back. So this isn't as strong of a sort of long-term value play, but it gets going sooner and it hits way harder, right? If you play this, you counter a spell, and then you have this 3/4 flyer hitting them, that's a really big deal. So sometimes you're going to play this with the full 5 mana available, response to a spell, and immediately snap off the counter. Honestly, I think more common will be you like flash it in their end step when they're tapped out. You then just untap, have that counter available, plus you're maybe holding other flash threats in hand, and they kind of have to feed you a card into it at some point. So yeah, really good if you have other ways of playing at instant speed, because you don't really want to be just holding up for 2 mana for this all the time when it's in play, and then they obviously, it's on board. They don't have to play into it. So you don't want to be just losing that mana if they don't play into it. But certainly like a pretty reasonable card to include in like most relatively high power level cubes, I'd say.
No, I think that's fair. Like, I'm not. I think this is a fine card. I'm not super blown away by it, if I'm honest with you. I think it's fine. There's just so many good blue creatures at this point, and like yeah, and I think you nailed it entirely with this wants to go in a deck that is fine holding up mana, like other flash threats, other counter spells as well. Like there is the danger with this that kind of like that deck might have enough counter magic already, but I don't know, can a deck ever have too much counter magic, James?
And it's counter magic for kills them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is a thing of like a 3-mana 3/4 is that will beat them down. Kind of like how do you feel about like specifically giving them a card though, like replacing the spell that you've countered with it?
I think because this is hitting quite hard in the air, it's kind of okay. Like, I guess I feel more than compensated for that because I now have a 3/4. Like obviously, it would be way stronger if that part wasn't there, but I sort of think that's okay. The only thing that concerns me about this card, honestly, is because if you're not using the counter right away, it's very face up. And if the thing that they are trying to get past this is an instant, you might be in a spot where you're reluctant to tap the rest of your mana even on their end step, because they can just play the instant while you're tapped out, and you may end up just sort of burning too much mana, right? Because the old version, Glenland Archmage, which has now got slightly power capped, but part of the reason that was so good was because it was only 1 mana to activate. You could basically hold that up forever, right? It just didn't cost you that much, whereas 2 is a very real cost.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like I think maybe part of my issue with this card is I know I will misplay with it. I think I could see myself leaving up 2 mana too much, basically, or mistiming it, or maybe that's like what. Yeah, basically every time I play this card, I feel I will leave up mana at the wrong time or counter the wrong thing, that kind of stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I like because the effect is powerful. Like we have like you touched on earlier the 5-mana version of this card. I'm not as high on that. Like it's nice to have, but like we've run things like Voracious Great Shark in the past. They kind of came out pretty quickly. I think maybe this is one actually if you're just doing a full-on flash deck. I think original Gunnar Lenger is more just generic, or it was a staple in Cube for a while, but it was a generically good card. My gut with this is that this is if you're doing a archetype that cares about flash more than, because I think this one really wants to go in with a lot of other effects that you can cast at instant speed. Not as generically good is my vibe with this.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. Maybe if you're playing Simic and building around, there's that like wolf, which makes more wolves when you cast stuff on their turn. Could be a nice include there.
All right, let's keep it rolling. We have an Oko, everyone. Don't panic, it's going to be okay. We have Oko, Lorwyn Liege. It is 2 and a blue for a 3 starting loyalty legendary planeswalker Oko. So I was wrong earlier when I said we only have 1 planeswalker in this set. I swear they said that was a thing, but never mind. It has a static ability of, at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a green. If you do, transform Oko. It has a /2 of up to 1 target creature gains all creature types. It has the reminder text that effect does not end. It has a +1 of target creature gets -2/-0 until your next turn. But obviously, if we've untapped with this and we've paid a green, we can transform it into Oko Shadowmoor Scion, which has, at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a blue. If you do, transform it back. It has a -1 of mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. It has a -3 of create 2 3/3 green elk creature tokens, and a -6 of choose a creature type. You get an emblem with creatures you control of the chosen type, get +3/+3, and have vigilance and hexproof. So as James mentioned with the creatures, it doesn't leave play. It's not going to come back in with no loyalty. The loyalty you have on the front will transfer over to the back. So the gimmick with this one is the front side pluses us, and the back side minuses us. So we have another sexy Oko thirst trapping his way through Lorwyn here. And for me, this does potentially fall into the trap of being too specific to go into most cubes. Like, this card is, I think, quite good in cubes that are supporting that creature type matters deck. So if you are doing creatures or if you're doing merfolk, if you're doing elves, if you're doing goblins, if you're doing all these types of archetypes and you want a card to kind of pull things together, that is where I think this is good. Because as a value planeswalker, like, take out all the creature synergy, this is not phenomenal. If we just want like the ability to gain value and shrink some creatures, we have things like Baby Jace for that. The front side, I do think is quite anemic if you're not in that creature type matters deck. 3 mana to shrink a creature is not great. The backside, I do think, is better, but then we have to untap and add another mana to get there. The -3 of making some bodies or the -1 of some card selection, I think, is nice. Like, the mill, like, I think you might run this in a self-mill deck if you're a little bit desperate. If you missed out on the mulch, then this is at least a repeatable way of, I guess, milling some cards. And I think the emblem on the ultimate is nice, but again, you really need to have a bunch of the same creatures for that to be worth it. So being honest, I only see this in I only see this in a cube where you care about creature types in multiple decks. Again, if you're doing elves or merfolk or zombies, stuff like that, there you will get an effect out of all of the abilities, is how I see this. Like, every part of the card becomes good. You're kind of unlocking the card by having that synergy in your cube, and that's where I could see this being run. James, what do you think? Are you kind of on board with that, or do you like Oko just as is, basically?
I kind of think this card sucks, actually. I mean, Oko has not left the gym since Eldraine, so
he's not.
Props to him for that. But
or had a carb.
Yeah. Yeah, ketogenic Oko is really doing good work there. But not power level, and I think that makes sense. You know, if you skip for carbs, I think your power level goes down, and I think that's what's happened to Oko here. But my issue with the creature type part, right, is that sort of makes sense in a gameplay idea that you would unlock your creature type synergies because you drew this card. But from a deck building point of view, in your Typal Matters deck, I don't think you're actually going to run a bunch of off-type creatures with the hope that the Oko is going to make them work, right? That's just not reliable. If I'm doing the typal stuff, I want the vast majority of my creatures to be the right type already. So I don't think that really sort of justifies this guy's inclusion. And then, I think outside of that, the power level is just not really there, right? Because the front side does so little, you're really sort of just hoping that it survives and gets to the backside. Because normally with a Planeswalker, if they deal with it, at least you got one activation, right? Whereas with this, you kind of didn't, because the front side is so low impact. It's kind of a disaster if they do manage to deal with it before you can flip it over. I would guess the most common mode would be sort of, you play this, you do whichever plus leaves you with most loyalty. Like, if the -2/-0 is going to save it some loyalty, then maybe you do that. Otherwise, you do the +2. Then you flip it over and you make 2 elk and hope that's going to be enough to protect it. Then you have to flip it back, and you really do have to keep investing mana in this card as well, which is a bit annoying. Like, if you play this on turn 3 and then you have a 4-drop you want to play on turn 4, then it's like you can't flip this over, and it's just not really unlocking any value. It's not really getting going. I don't really believe in this card.
No, yeah. So I agree with everything you said. The only thing is, in limited, like the decks that are trying to do a creature type matters deck, they will still have to run creatures that aren't the chosen type. Like, they'll run a plant and they want to make it an elf. So like, I think it will come up, but I do agree it's not as reliable as you want it to be. So so effectively it's a +1 most of the time, or a +2 for no real gain. That doesn't feel great, but I guess they were scarred by the first Oko and have really tried to keep it chill since then.
Yes, it is aggressively safe. I will give them that.
Yes. All right. We have another flip card next, James. What do you think of Sig Wonderwine Wisdom?
Yeah, for sure. If you thought that Oko flipping mechanic was neat, then this is good because you can actually play this one. So Sig is 1 blue for a 2/2 legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. Said Sig can't be blocked. It's a pretty good start. 2 mana, 2/2 unblockable. And whenever this creature enters or transforms into Sig Wonderwine Wisdom, target creature gains. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card till end of turn. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay white if you do transform Sig. It transforms into Sig Wonderbrine Shield. This is also a 2/2 unblockable. But this one has, when this creature transforms into Sig Wonderbrine Shield, target creature you control gains protection from each color until end of turn. And again, beginning of your main phase, you may pay blue. If you do, you transform it back. That was a lot of text.
There's so many flip cards in this set, James.
Yeah. I know. So I like this one a lot more. This is, firstly, 2 mana, 2/2 unblockable is just not that bad starting point. Like, it's going to pressure your opponent, it's going to pressure our planeswalkers. It's really good if you're fighting over the initiative or over the monarchy. All good things. Plus, in the right deck, this is going to quite frequently draw you a card the turn it enters. Right? If you have any creature and can get in, this draws you a card on the way in. At that point, it's already been really good. The transform is then threatening to get another creature through, right? It can target itself with that protection ability, but it generally doesn't need to because it's already unblockable. But this can threaten to get another creature past their blockers, which is good. And then obviously at that point, you're then threatening to flip it back and get more cards and keep that train going. So I think is quite a lot for a 2-drop. I think this is a pretty good power level. The only issue is, right, that this is a creature that needs to go in a deck with lots of other creatures. And I feel like in most cubes, that's just not what blue-white is about, really.
No, it's specifically the opposite of that. Normally.
Exactly. So for that reason, it's only going in a very small, probably subsection of cubes, but I think the cubes that do want this, it's actually going to be really, really good. If your blue-white deck is more doing like a tempo flyersy thing, I think this is actually really strong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think you smashed it. Yeah. This needs to be in a cube where you're also playing a 1-drop in your blue-white deck. So like those do exist. Like there is tempo in blue. Does exist in some cubes in more mid-rangey type cubes. Like this is, maybe you can splash this in like a ninja deck perhaps. But and obviously if you are doing Merfolk as well, this is probably quite a good Merfolk to play on too.
The ninjas thing is interesting. Honestly, I bet if you're like the good blue-black ninjas deck with a bunch of evasive creatures, I think you can just play this, right? I think it's fine
as an unblockable creature. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's an unblockable creature that combos with your other unblockable creatures to draw you cards the turn it enters. And then later on, if this enables your ninja, it bounces back to your hand. You can then draw more cards by replaying it and targeting your creature again. I think it's totally fine if you can't flip this.
No, that's fair. Yes, yeah. Unlike some of the other ones we've seen, the front side is just fine. Yeah, is fine. Like, I don't know, stick a bone splitter on it, I guess.
Yeah. It's weird. I think if you put this in most sort of high power level cubes now, even though it's a blue-white wild card, it would more frequently see play in blue-black.
No, yeah, I go with that. Yeah. Sig's a cool one, but I think it just needs the right environment. All right, we have our last blue card next. It's Thirst for Identity. This is 2 and a blue for an instant. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. So this is another entry in our Thirst cycle, kind of like the Oko that we saw previously. We 3 mana instants, draw 3, discard 2 unless you discard a certain card. So we've had basic lands, we've had artifacts and enchantments, and now we have creatures. These are all solid cards. Like the instant speed is nice. The discard isn't often a downside in a lot of decks. Like we have like blue has things like Delve, we have a Abhorrent Oculus, we have Baby Jace. Like blue decks are fine with cards going to the graveyard. Similarly to Sig, my gut is that if you specifically want this thirst, you want more creatures in your deck, I guess. Which again isn't traditionally like. If you look at the majority of cubes, blue is the color with the least creatures because it has so many good instant and sorceries. When we get the thirst for insert instant and sorcery, that will probably be quite good. So again, you're probably doing something like Merfolk or Ninjas, some kind of blue-based tempo deck that is going to be running more creatures for this to be the version of choice. I don't know how many of the thirsts actually see a great amount of play. Like, I do like this card. This effect is good, but like we have Stock Up, we have like Charter Course is 2 mana, and then we have all the other blue cantrips under the sun. Yeah, fine card. I could see it coming in for a little bit. What do you think of this card, James?
Yeah, Stock Up really embarrasses this card, doesn't it? Yeah, I think of the first cycle, the one where you discard a basic land is generally the best one.
Yeah, because that's like not a real card, if that makes sense.
Exactly. It's obviously it's not, sometimes you'll need the bat land to discard 2 other cards, and that's annoying. But in general, when you cast your 3 mana card draw spell, it's often not on turn 3, right? It's you cast your cards that impact the board, and then you cast this later to restock. So you're sort of more fine. You'd rather discard a land than a spell. So yeah, for that reason, I think the land one is generally the best. The one upside of this theoretically is in Reanimator, right, where you're actively looking to discard creatures. But honestly, even in that deck, I'd much rather just have something cheaper, like a Careful Study, to set up my reanimation. And honestly, if I'm discarding and reanimating my Archon of Cruelty, then it probably wouldn't hurt that much that I had to discard an extra card because I had the first for knowledge, or is it Discovery, the basic land one?
I think so.
Whatever, instead of this card, right? Because my good Reanimator plan is so powerful that it doesn't actually matter to discard one more card. So yeah, I don't see a huge amount of upside in this over first for Discovery or the other parts of this cycle.
Thirst for other insert name here. Yeah.
Yes. Continue. You can first for whatever you like, basically. They're all fine.
You do you.
Exactly.
No shame here.
Exactly. No first shaming here.
Nice. All right. We're moving on to black. James, what do you think of Aberrant Return? Go with that.
Yeah, so Aberrant Return is 4 black, so 6 mana for sorcery. You can put 1, 2, or 3 target creature cards from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Each of them enters with a -1/-1 counter. So one thing I really like about this card is that it's any graveyard. We don't see that very much now. Like, almost all of the Reanimator stuff now is your graveyard. So I think that's really good.
That's because this is a commander card, James.
It does look suspiciously commander.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. It's big, it's flashy, it's powerful. It needs loads of setup, loads of mana. Listen, if you're a self-mill deck in a slower cube, this could be a good finisher for you. It will end a lot of games. It's quite cool with Buried Alive specifically. Just go Buried Alive for perfect 3 creatures out of your deck and then get them all back. If that doesn't end the game, you probably built your deck, I suggest. Obviously, this is not one for cubes that require efficiency, but what do you think, Daniel? Maybe for your Treat Yourself cube, could this be making an appearance?
Yeah, this is definitely one for slower cubes. Like, this isn't going anywhere near a cube that can do Dark Ritual, Entomb, Reanimate. Like, I see this as this is cubes where the Reanimator deck is more of like a package for a mid-range or a control deck. That's kind of like grind. Like, it's not the speedy turn 1 to 3 Reanimator. It's I have a controlling deck with some fatties that over the course of the game will go to the bin. And then this is the thing that kind of like, effectively, this is a game winner. Like we cast this. sometime after turn 6, and then it brings back the best, either the best 3 things that have died over the course of a game, and we use that card advantage to win, or we put some stuff in the bin, or we've buried alive, as you mentioned, and then that kind of in slower cubes, like this is I think is a fine 6-drop to cast to win you the game. But yeah, definitely not one for more efficient ones where you're trying to do the thing very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. It's it does have that limitation, right? Of if you're putting 6 drops in your deck, you kind of want them to always be good when you have 6 mana, which this isn't, right? This requires setup. Like, if you compared this to like, should you put this in your deck or should you put like a Grave Titan in your deck?
Yeah,
you'd probably win more games by putting the Grave Titan in.
But why not have 2 6-drops, James?
That is true. That is true.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like you'll know. Like if you have a slower cube environment, I think you'll know if you want this. In my Treat Yourself cube, my slower cube, all of my reanimation spells are like. I think maybe we have one at 4, but they're all generally like 5 or 6 mana, and they do things like this. So there, I'm excited for this. That seems like a perfect way of winning a game in that. But yeah, not for more efficient cubes, as we kind of touched on. All right, we have a cool one next. We have Bitterbloom Bearer. This is black for a 1/1 creature fairy rogue. It has flash, flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 blue and black fairy creature token with flying. So we have Bitter Blossom here on a stick. Bitter Blossom is a fantastic card in a number of decks. Like, it's very good at holding down the board, very good at making you fodder for an aristocrat deck, that kind of thing. So the fact we have another one just by itself might mean that this is good enough for larger cubes that are looking for another one of these effects already. For cubes that are either already running Bitter Blossom or have recently cut it, I guess the question is, does it being on a creature make it better? And my kind of assumption maybe is probably not. Like, one of the nice things about Bitter Blossom is that it is going to make you a creature every turn. It is difficult for your opponents to have an answer for. Like, it's an enchantment. It's harder to... enchantments are traditionally the hardest permanent type to remove from the game. This being a creature does mean that it dies to all of your opponent's removal. It also is a 1/1, so the flash is less good than it would be on a larger creature, because you're not really going to jump scare this as a blocker. Like, if it stops you losing the game, then sure, you'll do that. But generally speaking, this is not going to get into... Like, this is more for being mana efficient or holding up a removal spell on your opponent's turn and then bringing this in. That's where this is going to come in. Specifically, though, if you're doing the aristocrat build, it being a creature could be considered an upside. Like, this will trigger your aristocrat stuff when it dies, and in that way, that could be an upside. And in that way, that is an upside. But for me, I think the biggest thing of all of the things holding this back over Bitter Blossom itself is the double black pips in the top right-hand corner. Like, the decks that really want this are definitely 2 and often 3 colors. And the double black on turn 2, I think, is going to be really hard. So for that reason, I'm probably not going to be running out to grab one myself, like, even though I have aristocrats in some of my cubes, even though I have like control decks that just want to come up the board and have blockers for my opponent's menacey, dreadful Boros creatures. But if I had a 720 cube and I specifically wanted a second version of this effect, then perfect. This is a second version of that effect for those environments. James, what do you think? Am I under... I know you're a big fan of Bitter Blossom, but like, am I undervaluing this, would you say?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bitter Blossom because I like the vibes and it does some interesting stuff. But I don't think it's like, you know, a card that should be going in the highest power level cubes anymore. And this is obviously certainly a lot less resilient against removal than Bitter Blossom. It does have a few upsides though. Firstly, it's just quicker than Bitter Blossom, right? You can, if you play this on turn 2, you're attacking on turn 3, which Bitter Blossom doesn't do. You're always 1 body ahead of Bitter Blossom, right? Because this gives you a 1/1 in and of itself. Secondly, the flash means that you're almost always going to get the first token, right? Unless they have just passed with instant speed removal up and not done anything. you're getting that first token, right? You flash it in on their end step, you untap, you get a token, then maybe they kill it next turn. So that's nice. But again, obviously way easier to remove. Black is really tough. In most decks, double pip 2-drops you can't reliably cast on the second turn of the game. That's obviously a big issue. But this is a effect you generally want to get out as early as possible because you want to get that value train going. Yeah, listen, I think if you are just interested in repeatable ways to make tokens to enable that aristocracy stuff, maybe you're running a card like a Jadar, for example, at the moment. That card's not that good. You could maybe look at running something like this instead. But I wouldn't be including it just as a sort of generically good card,
Yeah, I go with that. Yeah, how do you feel about this in like mono black devotion, James? Like this, and then several turns later we cast a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Is that kind of where this is better? Like we curve this into Necropotence, into Phyrexian Obliterator, into. Oh, I'm selling myself on this.
I mean, I'm less suspicious of this than the Grey Merchant of Asphodel in that scenario.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
That's something, I guess.
All right, but what about our next card, James? What do you think of Dawnhand Dissident?
I think this card's really cool. I haven't decided if it's very good yet, but I think it's really cool.
Yes.
So Dawnhand Dissident is a single black mana for a 1/2 creature elf warlock. And this is the first time we're coming across the Blight ability in this set. So Blight is one of the set mechanics. And it comes with a number. So, for example, on this card, you can Blight 1. And when you Blight 1, you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. If it was Blight 3, then you would put 3 -1/-1 counters on that creature. Notably, you can't spread the counters around. They all have to go on the same creature. But it is an additional cost of activating these abilities. So for this creature, you can tap it and Blight 1 to Surveil 1, or you can tap it and Blight 2 to exile a card from a graveyard. And then it says, during your turn, you may cast creature spells from among cards you own exiled with this creature by removing 3 counters from among creatures you control in addition to paying their other costs. So obviously the Blight ability is giving you those creatures to remove in theory, and the Blight 2 ability is exiling cards from your graveyard. Then you're going to cast them, remove those counters you put on the creature, and get a little engine going there. It does require quite a bit of setup though, right? You need other creatures to put the counters on, plus you need a stocked graveyard. I wouldn't be relying on just that Surveil ability to fuel your graveyard. It's only Surveil 1, you need a bit more than that.
And ideally the other creature has at least 2 toughness.
Well, at least 3 toughness. Really,
yeah, doesn't die. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think the sort of generic play pattern with this, right, is you're going to Blight 1, put a -1/-1 counter on itself to get a Surveil, and then you'll Blight 2 onto something else that has at least 3 toughness, so it doesn't die, and then immediately cast the creature out of the yard, remove all of those counters, and you'll potentially then the ability to do that again, right? So that is a lot of value for just 1 mana investment. But there's a lot of setup. It's very conditional. They can also just kill this, if it's threatening to be a really big problem. It does die to everything. But for such a low mana investment, I think in a sort of graveyard, if you've got a graveyard theme going, I think this is pretty interesting, It's a replaceable enabler of something like Insidious Roots. I do like that card. It does some pretty cool stuff with Emperor of Bones as well, because you can... Because it's not remove -1/-1 counters, it's remove any counters. So you can, it sort of works both ways, right? You could Blight onto the Emperor of Bones, put -1/-1 counters on it, that cancels out the +1/+1 counters. You can then reuse your Emperor of Bones using the adaptability. and keep going that way. You're then sort of recurring a lot of cards from the graveyard. Or you could remove the +1/+1 counters from the Emperor in order to cast a creature out of the yard with this, and then get another creature out of the yard with Emperor and keep the value train going that way. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pretty interesting stuff this does for just 1 mana. It might all be too much setup, but I'm interested in trying it at least, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to caveat everything I'm about to say by saying, like this is a 1 mana rare with 3 abilities that will probably break a bunch of formats. But yeah, this is not one for higher powered cubes for me. It's not quick, and I don't think it's efficient enough for those environments. Like, if you're able to build an engine in your cube, like you mentioned Insidious Roots, I think this is very strong there, because Insidious Roots is one of the cards that rewards you when cards leave your graveyard. This does that with the -2, which is nice, or with the Blight 2, which is nice, and also the cast, when you remove 3 counters from among creatures, you will get basically double dip with your Insidious Roots on that, which is nice. And yeah, the fact that it can also, like, it can be graveyard hate, like you can only cast a card that you own with it, but like what might see this effectively, this is a main deckable sideboard card. This is you can like, if you come up against, like, if you're playing this as a value engine, which is probably how most of the time this is going to be played, it is a sideboard card that you can main deck against Reanimator or against someone that's trying to do some stuff with key cards in their graveyards. Yes, you can't get it back from your opponent's graveyard, you can just exile it, but sometimes nerfing their Archon is fine. Like, sometimes this is a 1 mana 1/2 that you Blight 2 onto itself to answer their thing in the graveyard. Like, yes, it has to untap, blah, 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 blah. Maybe the sideboardy part of it is what could make it see play in regular cubes, and then the engine part is a nice little bonus. But my gut is, to get the most out of this card, you need to be in a slower environment where it's going to stick around and you can do that value thing a couple of times, basically.
Yeah, I think you certainly need to be in a cube where there's a pretty dedicated graveyard deck. I don't know that it has to be that slow, though, because the nice thing about this, right, is that it is just a 1 mana investment up front, and like the abilities don't cost mana to use. And the graveyard decks sort of like having creatures in their graveyard anyway, right? And they're good at getting them back. So I can see a world where you play this because you're going to play it, you're going to surveil a bit, and if it dies, you're just not going to cry about it because it's just going to go to a graveyard. Maybe it'll come back later, maybe it won't. And you didn't have to invest a lot of mana in it, and they had to answer it, so that's maybe good enough, because it is threatening to accrue a lot of value in a long game, right?
No, I think that's fair. Yeah, as someone who's played Dredge in a bunch of formats, not having mana available is something I'm quite aware of. But yeah, I'm open to this card being good, but my gut is it's just going to end up being a little bit too slow. Like standard, cool, crack on, we're probably quite good. Like, I think there's already talk of some other stuff that works quite well with this. And like, if you do happen to have other things that put counters on things in some way, then I think this does get better, not having to jump through all the hoops all the time. If there's other ways of making this better, because there is, what do you call it? The Balos Prime was the like Titania upgrade that we got. Like, it's a 4 mana 10/10 that enters with 6 stun counters on it. That's a nice little way of taking counters off stuff. Like, if this would take counters off of Dark Depths, maybe I'd be more hyped for it than for again, purely Timmy reasons. But yeah, I think it's a fine card.
Well, see, what we can do, right, is we play Badgermole Cub, we Earthbend onto our Dark Depths. Now it's a creature, and we can start removing ice counters off it to cast cards out of our graveyard. Yeah.
We've done it.
Absolutely.
We have broken both Badgermole Cub and Dark Depths. Nice. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Grave Venerations. This is 3 and a black for an enchantment that says, when this enchantment enters, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your end step, if you are the monarch, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So, play pattern and base level for this. This is a 4 mana to draw a card and zombify something. And then on top of that, we get a Zulaport Cutthroat style of effect. This is not the any creature dies, ping someone. This is the commander version of our stuff dies, ping the whole board. But obviously in one-on-one, you're only pinging your opponent. There are a bunch of these type of effects on creatures and now some on enchantments. This is generally more expensive than most of those, like Zulaport Cutthroat is 2. I know there's a enchantment that does it at 3 mana and also makes a body. This is more expensive than those, but obviously it does come with the Monarchy, and the Monarchy we know is a very fair mechanic when it's one-on-one. I think this is a card for an aristocrat archetype, and I think that's where it's good, because we're going to be sacrificing stuff, so there'll be creatures in our graveyard that we can get back with this. We will likely have a decent board state, so we'll have blockers to keep the Monarchy, and some of the other, importantly I think, some of the other Monarch enchantments are kind of very good. Like there's the white one, there's the white court that makes 4/4 angels if you're the Monarch on your upkeep. That's a very broken card that just goes into any power level of cube. This one for me is a Monarch card that isn't going to steamroll the game. Like obviously we haven't mentioned, like for those unaware, the Monarch, if you're the Monarch, you draw a card at the end of turn, and if you get hit by your opponent, they become the Monarch. A lot of the other Monarch enchantments are very backbreaking and very game-ending. This isn't that, and I think that's why I kind of like it. It's an effect that like an aristocrat deck would like to run, and it has the addition of bringing the Monarchy in the game. And I quite like the Monarchy. I think it is nice, but some of the effects of the Monarchy are very, very broken. Specifically on the Monarchy, this should not be the only Monarch card that you run in your cube. If you like the Monarch and you are running other Monarch-based cards, then this becomes part of the conversation. I'm not a big fan of just running like one Monarch card, because it can be then it becomes a bit more warping, if that makes sense. James, what are your thoughts on this one? I am aware that generally speaking it is a 4 mana. I don't know. It's not a 4 mana do nothing, but it's close. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think this card is going to look really good in games you're already winning, you know?
Yes, if you're behind and your opponent has a board, then you've just given them some card draw.
Yeah, there's a reason that we don't tend to play the Monarchy cards that don't affect the board, right? Because if you spend 4 mana not affecting the board, it's not necessarily a good thing that you introduced Monarchy to that game, you know? Because you're putting yourself behind by not affecting the board, and the Monarchy is a mechanic that punishes you for being behind. There's I think Court of Grace is a great example, actually. That's a super powerful card, right? It's really, really pushed. It makes your Monarch makes a 1/1 every turn. If you are the Monarch, it makes a 4/4 flying every turn. It's absolutely cracked. That card's still like not amazing. It doesn't see play in the higher power level of cube because it doesn't affect the board right away, and it introduces the Monarchy, and sometimes you end up being too far behind to pull back, even with that super powerful ongoing advantage that gets you. And that only waits a turn to affect the board, right? This isn't like it starts pumping out creatures even after a turn, right? It's just getting something back from your graveyard. You still have to invest in mana. I suspect that there will be a bunch of games where this would actually be better if it just didn't say have the Monarchy bit, you know?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, if it's correct to just not cast it, maybe. That doesn't feel good.
Yeah, the 4 mana do nothing introduce the Monarchy, I think is generally kind of tough. Like, don't get me wrong, there'll be matchups where it's really good, there'll be games that's very good. If you're playing against like a control deck with hardly ever creatures, go nuts, this card would be great in that matchup. But I think in aggregate, probably not amazing, actually.
No, I think that's fair. Like for me, I am seeing this in being good in a deck that is spewing out a load of tokens. But yeah, you're correct. Like if you're behind, this is like effectively unplayable. So that is a bit more of a tougher sell. This next card is an uncommon that I'm quite high on, James. What do you think of Iron Shield Elf?
Yeah, for sure. So this is 1 black for a 3/1 creature elf warrior at uncommon. And you can discard a card, and this creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. So basically, this is a color-shifted seasoned Hallowblade at uncommon. I think this is really, really good for Peasant. Black doesn't tend to have great 2-mana creatures, especially at Peasant, and this, I think, is a pretty strong one. It's also a discard outlet if you need that. It's a pretty strong generic beatdown creature. It also blocks really well. Like, 3 power, you can give it indestructible. Like, it's kind of painful to start throwing away creatures into this. The only thing this card can struggle against, really, at that sort of high level is decks which just spew out a lot of like low value, low 1/1 creatures, and it just becomes like not profitable to attack into them because they're not worth a card, right? It's not worth discarding a card to kill one of them. But yeah, in general, I think this is a lot for 2 mana at uncommon. Really like it for Peasant. At higher power levels, maybe if you want to get another discard outlet in on a otherwise playable creature, like this is not bad. It's better than what was like the 2 mana version of Putrid Imp people used to play.
Oh, is there a fairy? No.
Yeah.
It's Fairy Macabre, the one that you can just discard itself. Una's Prowler.
Yeah. It's better than those cards. People don't tend to play those cards anymore, but yeah, maybe at a slightly higher power level if you want something like that. But it's certainly not, getting into super high power level cubes anytime soon. But I think Peasant, this is a slam dunk, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Peasant and lower powered level cubes that are doing the madness mayhem thing. Like, there isn't actually, like, the drop off on free discard outlets is actually quite significant. In black, like repeatable ways of discarding cards for free, does drop off quite significantly. So yeah, base level, this is a perfectly solid black aggressive creature. But again, yeah, if you're doing like madness or mayhem, I quite like this card a lot more. Like, that is the perfect deck for Peasant and for like cubes that have rares, but they're not going ham on the power level. You have time to do stuff. Like, I really like this card, and similarly to, like, I've touched on aristocrats a few times in this episode, like, you never want to be paying for your sacrifice outlet. You never really want to be paying for your discard outlet. It being free is just phenomenal. Like, you can do it at any point, and I really like that. Yeah, I'm quite high on this card, but it is going in for a specific thing for me. If you can get advantage by discarding, then I like it more, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next up we have Moonshadow. This is a single black for a 7/7 creature elemental with Menace, and this creature enters with 6 -1/-1 counters on it. Whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. This is a cool card. Like, it does need some setup, but realistically, in most decks, if you can remove 2 counters from it, then I think you're happy. If you have a 1-mana 3/3, that's generically going to be good. And the more I think about it, the more counters will come off of this pretty easily. Like, if you're a self-mill deck, nice. If you're an aristocrat deck, if you have fetch lands, if you have treasure, like, this will trigger off tokens, which is nice. Like, or just creatures dying by you playing Magic, this will get bigger pretty quickly. Like, fortunately, I don't think this is a card for just mono black aggro, like, because it's very cheap and efficient. And it gets bigger by doing anything, by playing a game Magic. I think it's solid because even if you draw it late game while the board's progressed a bit, it will still do things. Like, yes, it will start small later on, but there'll be more things to die. There'll be more trading off. There'll be more things to do. But, like, you can get this pretty big. Like, I think of this more as a 1-mana 1/1 that grows rather than a 7/7 that kind of shrinks, if that makes sense. Like a 1-mana 1/1 with Menace that gets bigger as you play Magic. That's very good. You would play that. But yeah, the limit's obviously is 7/7, but yeah, I think this is a cool card. Like, I think this is going to be a cool, efficient beater. Like, we've seen, like, I'm not comparing this to Abhorrent Oculus is a stretch because that is a very powerful card that gives you card advantage, but it's the same sort of thing of, like, it is a powerful card that is cheap to cast that has some kind of downside. The downside is this: it comes in and is smaller and grows. My guess is that this is one we test in more powerful cubes. It probably comes out when the new hotness comes along, but I do think this is cool. goes quite hard with Dawnhand Dissident. This is a great thing to remove counters from. What do you think of Moonshadow, James?
Yeah, this is cool. I think if your opponent casts this on turn 1, you're going to be pretty sad about it, you know? Like, this is going to be... I think this on turn 1 is very threatening, actually. It's going to grow really quickly, and the menace is huge here, right? The test will be how bad is it when you draw it late game. Yes, stuff will trade. Maybe you've managed to save a fetch land or something, but it's just always going to be a little bit behind the curve, right? If you do find it late, but I could certainly see trying this. I think it's interesting. It might be that it's it's just not quite. It's a bit too inconsistent, but my guess is like in a black deck where enough stuff is going to a graveyard, it does enough. It's a bit annoying, but it says creature card going to a graveyard because that means it doesn't trigger off tokens.
Oh, that's annoying.
It doesn't do tokens, yeah, because tokens aren't cards.
Oh, permanent cards. Yes, okay, yes.
Yeah.
So okay. Apologies. Treasure doesn't work. Okay, that's a bit annoying.
Yeah. But it does. But it triggers off fetch lands and obviously any of your creatures. And it's nice that it's from anywhere, right? You can just loot or whatever, and it's and you're removing counters from this, which is pretty good. Interesting that you mentioned Abhorrent Oculus, by the way. It's also really, really good if you manifest it. Which because then you can just flip it up for 1 mana as a 7/7 menace.
That's cool.
Yeah. So obviously, we can manifest with Oculus. There's also like Cryptic Coat people play, which manifest cards. So that's a nice little bit of synergy in there as well.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Any way of getting this into play that doesn't it enters and then becomes active, I guess. Like morphing or manifesting is. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Dress Down is a card which crops up in some cubes sometimes. If you cast this with a Dress Down in play, it just will enter without any counters on.
Can you stifle that ability? No, hold on. It enters with, I guess.
No, because it enters with.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's not a trigger, unfortunately. But yeah, I think there's good stuff to do with this. I'd be curious to try it. Wouldn't shock me if it ended up getting cut, but I think it's certainly worth testing.
No, it does seem fun. All right, let's get the ball rolling. Next up, we have Twilight Diviner. This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 creature elf cleric. When this creature enters, surveil 2. And when one or more other creatures you control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this is another cool card. It has a lot of utility and a lot of things will trigger it. But for me, for this to get in a deck, you need to be running a bunch of those effects in your cube already. Like a 3-mana 3/3 that surveils is fine, but we generally see those on like 1-mana creatures or at most 2-mana creatures because it's like that's what our deck is doing very early, and then our 3-drops profit, if that makes sense. So for this to get into a cube, I want a bunch of effects that will trigger it. But it does trigger off a lot. Like it triggers off of all reanimation effects, like double Archon of Cruelty seems hot. This will trigger off of Persist. It'll trigger off of Unearth. It'll trigger off of like all of our black aggressive creatures with recursion, like Bloodghast and Forsaken Miner, those kind of things. That does seem cool. My honest opinion is that it does feel a bit like running a fine card to make our good cards better. Like in everything I've mentioned, the decks are doing the things that we want anyway if we're doing those things, but getting double tokens can be quite nice. If I was in a cube that was doing a bunch of graveyard stuff, I think this is cool and I'd probably want to give it a go. If my graveyard section isn't super deep, then this may be a pass for me.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. I really like that it gives you the surveil on the way in because it helps you set up your graveyard shenanigans. I kind of feel like you don't need it in the sort of a streamlined reanimator deck where you're returning an 8-drop, right? Like your Archon of Cruelty should be enough. You shouldn't have to play a sort of suboptimal card to get 2 Archons when you get 1. You should be able to win with 1 Archon. But if you're doing stuff with like Chthonian Nightmare and Unearth, or creatures that bring themselves back, maybe you're like really leaning into the graveyard stuff and you have like Prized Amalgam or something in your cube, that, or like Bloodghast stuff, that's where I get really interested in something like Twilight Diviner, and it could like really amp up all that recursion value you're getting. So yeah, not one for like high power level cube, because those sorts of decks just don't get that in high power level cube, to be honest. But for more of a mid level, a power level thing, if you have a lot of synergistic graveyard stuff, I think this could be worth a test.
No, that's nice. Yeah, this doing anything with with Chthonian Nightmare or Recurring Nightmare, just like a slow, grindy value thing where your board state explodes. That seems really cool. Actually, I'm here for that.
Exactly. Imagine I Recurring Nightmare my Eternal Witness, and now I have 2 Eternal
James,
Witnesses.
the value. Stop.
Oh,
they're already dead.
Over.
Stop.
It's over.
Okay, cool. We have one more card for today. Last up, we have Sinister Nullbark. It is 2 and a black for a 0/4 creature Treefolk Warlock with, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card and blight 1. So, go with me on this, James. I kind of see this as like a black Wall of Omens, or like a Wall of Blossoms. Like, we don't get the the card draw on ETB, but we do still get it that turn, which is nice. And then, effectively, there's a world where this just sits there and draws us 4 cards. That's not terrible. And like, yeah, if you can flicker it or bring it back, it'll go again. Or if you can put the counters on something else, you're just going to be continuing to draw cards. Like, I know that kind of we're not really in a world where we can run a Phyrexian arena, but like this does still block once or twice. Like maybe that's enough to get the value. Like yeah, if you're making counters, like that. There's another journey I want to go on with you, James. Like there's also a world where this is also a very slow sacrifice outlet in an aristocrat deck. Like if you're making 1/1s, you can turn them into card draw. Like if you don't have your full on sack outlet, you can use this to just like effectively, it's like a build your own skull clamp. I think a solid card for slower cubes. Like I don't think this gets into higher power level cubes, just because in those cubes, like the black card draw we want is immediate. It's for things like Doomsday that want to draw the card straight away. Like cards like Night's Whisper are where we are. But if we're slower, I could see this being a fine card.
Yeah, for sure. I really like the vibes on this card. This is the sort of card where if I open up your cube on Cube Cobra and I see this card, it makes me more excited to draft a cube. Yeah, like it's a 0/4. We can block your stuff. We can draw cards for days. It's not very quick. That's fine. It's not. This isn't going in the most ruthlessly efficient of cubes. I think the Phyrexian Arena comparison's a good one. Like, obviously, the upside of something like Arena is it's harder to remove, but this does a lot of the same thing. It does it on end step, so we get our cards quicker. And also, black just has more synergy with having a bunch of creatures in your deck than having a bunch of enchantments in your deck, right?
Yes, definitely.
That's really nice. Like, I don't see the Blight 1 as a huge drawback personally. Like, we can blight onto this without costing ourselves a ton. Like, sure, it makes it a slightly worse blocker. I struggle to imagine that we do that for 3 turns and then have nothing better to blight onto on the 4th turn than this killing itself,
Yeah, exactly.
You'll have found something. It's going to be fine. It is worth noting that this isn't optional. If it's not, you may blight 1 if you do draw a card. It's you have to blight 1.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't see that as being a huge issue. I think we should have enough creatures lying around in most builds that this that this will continue to be an upside. Yeah, I like this card. I'm not rushing out there to put it in powered cube or anything like that, but I think in mid power level cubes, yeah. It's not an aristocrats card in that like we're sacking a million creatures right away, but it goes well with aristocrats stuff in that aristocrats decks are going to have creatures they don't mind putting -1/-1 counters on, right? Yeah, good little value engine, I reckon.
Yeah, very solid. I feel we need to get friend of the channel, Firetruck Moto 1 for his blue nothing cube, because it doesn't have any power. It just sits there and draws cards. Perfect.
Yeah, he did tell me for this set review that he expects us to spend 30 minutes talking about this card. I don't think we can promise that, but I guess you can just repeat the last 2 minutes if you want.
Well, no, when you were saying, like, it's not a May and that could be a downside, I was thinking, like, are you going, like, it's a downside in your doomsday pile there? Can you muck up?
I suppose in that cube it might be a downside, actually, yeah.
No, phenomenal. No, all good. All right, so that's going to do it for the episode. We're halfway through the set. Do make sure you like the podcast, give us a 5-star review, all that good stuff, so you get notified. Ring the bell, I think, is one. Subscribe so that you get notified when part 2 comes out in a week. Until then, James, pleasure, man. A lot of cool cards we've gone through today.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Marvellous. And until next time, we will see you all soon. You all take care. Goodbye.